Good morning, Breaking Brown fam. This is Yvette Carnell from BreakingBrown.com, YourBlackWorld.net. And I wanted to take a quick moment out just to highlight something that I saw last week. And we wrote about it, Breaking Brown, but I hadn't had the opportunity to really address it. So, I wanted to address the meeting that Barack Obama had with members of the Congressional Black Caucus and their reaction to his reaction to bringing up the plight of historically black colleges. I want to put it out there, first of all, that I'm not a disinterested party in that matter. I'm a graduate of Howard University. But the thing that stood out for me with this meeting, you had the chair of the CBC and other members coming out basically saying Barack Obama didn't seem that interested in the plight of HBCUs, and he basically just said HBCUs should, get their shit together. And the thing that stood out for me is the idea that some people were surprised that this is his reaction to HBCUs. Partly because this has been Barack Obama's reaction to black people, not just HBCUs. So the idea that anyone is shocked or surprised, especially the CBC, who had to struggle for years to get a meeting with the first black president. Now just think about that. The Congressional Black Caucus can't get a meeting with the first black president. Now the thing that strikes me, people say, well, I don't care about the CBC. The CBC hasn't done anything for me. Well, I agree. The CBC is mostly kind of bought off and paid off, and they're, for the most part, they're kind of useless. They do some good stuff. I would really like to see that reparations bill, that research come to the floor, that John Conyers presented. But for the most part, no, they've kind of been bought and paid for. But still, the CBC hasn't done enough for black people. But in terms of the first black president, they have been there for Obama the whole way. Anytime a Republican went at the president, anytime a Republican, anytime somebody makes a tar baby comment or makes anything that's even slightly racist, you see just a swarm of CBC members make their way to TV news cameras and cry racism at the fact that Obama is being criticized. So the CBC has been there for Obama. So Obama should be there at least for the CBC because they've always had his back, even when he hasn't had their constituents' back. So, this is a group that he should be there for. This is a group that he should listen to, given their unending and unyielding, support for him. But he doesn't. It's just kind of a throwaway thing to him. So the fact that they're surprised that Barack Obama isn't that into historically black colleges or is not trying to support historically black colleges is shocking to me, because Barack Obama hasn't tried to support anything that would help black and brown people in this country. Maybe some brown people in terms of immigration, but certainly not black people. So, when you look at the plus loan change, which if you remember, when Barack Obama's Department of Education made a unilateral change, this wasn't a change that was pushed by Republicans. This wasn't a right-wing cabal. This was a change that his Department of Education made that extended the time that the credit search in terms of how, when you get a loan, how long they're going to go back and look at that loan, that the person who's borrowing, how long they're going to go back and look at their credit report. Now think about that. When you say, well, black people should have good credit. We just experienced one of the worst downturns in the history of this country. And you had banks scheming where these banks were targeting African Americans. This wasn't a case of just, oh, well, black people need to get their stuff together. This was a case where we were targeted by basically scam artists. We were struggling, and instead of helping us out and saying, you know what, I'm not going to change that student loan criteria. I'm not going to change that plus loan criteria. Barack Obama basically came in and made a bad situation worse for historically black college students and historically black colleges. So, he sort of rolled that back a little bit right before the election. How cynical is that? But the idea that you would believe that Barack Obama cares anything for historically black colleges is just insane to me. This is the same guy who, the federal government had a bunch of grants to give out. And get this, the grants were to study minority students. These were grants to study minority students and study what was best for minority students, the success of minority students. And it was astronomical. I think it was $1 billion or something. I don't remember what the amount was, but it was a multi-million-dollar grant package. And the majority of that went to white colleges, and HBCU Digest published that, and I will put that link up in this YouTube. But he gave federal monies to study minority students and minority achievement. He gave that to mostly white schools. So, and that's a lot of how colleges and universities, get their money. So let's not let, if you're looking at Barack Obama and you're wondering why he doesn't care about HBCUs, you can have that conversation. But the point of the matter is, the idea that he doesn't care is something that we've seen. He's showed us this throughout his administration. So what I'm trying to understand is why the Congressional Black Caucus was shocked when they went to a meeting. He was like, yeah, yeah, get your stuff together. And, the truth of the matter is, I had somebody say, well, historically black colleges really need to get their graduation rates together. And that's true, but let's talk about part of the reason why those graduation rates are low. There has been some mismanagement in historically black colleges, and there are some historically black colleges that are probably going to close. That's true. But let's think about another aspect of what's happening here. Historically black colleges educate a disproportionate number of poor kids from poor neighborhoods. So when you look at the legacy of this country, when you look at how these people were made poor, you look at redlining in black communities where the FHA basically, where the FHA basically decided we can't have any black mortgages. We're not going to insure any black mortgages in black neighborhoods. Basically creating ghettos. The government created ghettos in our community, and now you're telling us to get our stuff together. Well, part of the reason that we're disproportionately poor in this country is because of the government. When you look at Roosevelt, he kept the New Deal. The provisions in the New Deal went to white people. Black people who were mostly farm workers, they were cut out of the New Deal. So we didn't even get access to that until decades later. So it's amazing to me when people say, oh, the federal government, why are black people always asking for a handout? Because the federal government, made us poor. The federal government is a large part of the reason why we don't have the wealth that we're supposed to have. Even if you refuse to look at the fact that we were cut out of the New Deal, even if you refuse to look at redlining that created ghettos in our communities, which allowed these land sharks to come in and these loan sharks to come in and say, we're going to charge you, 100% more, or 50% more than a white person would pay, because what are you going to do? You can't get a loan anywhere else. So this sort of predatory lending, this sort of targeting of black people and targeting of black people in order to take advantage of us is something that the government has allowed for years. And even if you don't consider that, you consider the fact that black people were ran off their farms. Black people were ran off their land by white mobs, by white terror squads, the KKK and everyone else. And the government didn't protect us. The government didn't come in and say, you can't, these black people have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The government didn't do anything. And so we're here now, and we don't have as much as we need. And we're saying, well, the government shouldn't come to our back. Barack Obama has said that he wants to, for the first 2 years of a community college, he wants that to be covered. He wants the first 2 years of a community college to be paid for. Okay, he can do that for community colleges, but he can't help black colleges out, and he's a black man? What sense does that make? How can you support that as a black person? How can you support this president as a black person, given that? And, the last thing that I think I want to say here, I really want to call out people who are saying that historically black colleges aren't important. I've heard that so many times. Historically black colleges, they need to either do their thing or whatever. They're not really important. Well, and I've asked this question before, but I don't understand how you have a black community without black institutions. I don't understand how that is possible. Historically black colleges are part of the black community. And it's only, I haven't seen anybody but black people who are so desirous of tearing down their black institutions. You don't see any other community saying, these are our institutions. They're run by our people, but I want to tear them down because I want to go over here to the white school. And I don't see anything wrong with going to a white school. But I found that, or Ivy League school. But it's amazing to me that when Cornell West came out and started criticizing Obama, everybody went at Carnell. Oh, Carnell doesn't. If Carnell really loved black people, he would have taught it. He would have taught it a historically black college. If he really loved black people, he would have given his gifts to a historically black college. Well, Barack Obama didn't go to a historically black college, and nobody ever calls him out for it. And nobody ever says Barack Obama doesn't love historically black colleges because he didn't go to one. So the double standard in the black community is just it's just mind-boggling. You know, I just really never seen anything like it. And I brought a statistic here that I want to share. This says 3% of America's colleges. This says HBCUs constitute only 3% of America's colleges, but 20% of black graduates, 80% of black judges, 90% of black BAs in the STEM field. So even if you didn't go to an HBCU, you benefit from an HBCU. So the idea that you say, well, I didn't go to one, I don't care, you still benefit from it, and we still have a purpose. And I'm not saying that there are some things that need to be changed, but I'm saying that everything that Barack Obama did at this point, he made it worse. He didn't make it better. And so I think that that's something that we have to grapple with. We have to grapple with the fact that our first black president, you know, he may hang out with Jay-Z and listen to Lil Wayne, but he's just not that into black people, with the exception of, you know, entertainment and spectacle, which is what you could say about the mainstream. You know, that's just where he is, and he doesn't feel like he has any responsibility towards you in any way. He's the president of everyone except black people. And that's the way it has been since the beginning, and that's not going to change. And if you expect that to change, I think you are probably in for a rude awakening. So we'll talk about this, and I want to keep this conversation going. Yvette Carnell, BreakingBrown.com, or reach out to me on Facebook, on Twitter. Thank you. Bye bye.